Anthony was a bowl of sunshine to everyone, and sadly, because of these two monsters, he is not here anymore.
We finally need to take a close look at the systemic failure within this LA County DCFS. How many complaints do you need? 15, 20, 25, 88 allegations? It should only take one.
The system failed, Anthony!
Protesters have spoken out against the LA County Department of Children and Family Services handling of this case. DCFS was called out to Avalos' house several times. In a prior press conference, attorney Brian Claypool took aim at the department.
There were 18 separate investigations by DCFS of this household. This is not a case of the social workers are overworked. This is a case of flat out deliberate indifference toward the life of Anthony Avalos.
He was only 10 years old, intelligent, creative, and full of heart. Anthony Avalos had a favorite teacher, an honor roll certificate, and a spark in his eyes that told the world, "I'm here, I matter." But on June 21st, 2018, that light was extinguished in the most horrific way. What happened to Anthony inside the walls of his own home is something no child should ever endure. Anthony wasn't murdered by a stranger or under the cover of night in a dark alley, but in plain sight, under the roof of his own home by the people who were supposed to protect and love him the most. Telling Anthony's story isn't easy. It's not entertainment. It's a reckoning. A truth that demands to be told, no matter how uncomfortable, because the system didn't save Anthony, and neither did the adults who watched the warning signs pile up. Today we're going beyond the headlines. We're diving into the cracks that let monsters get away with so much for so long. You'll hear the voices of the accused, the ones who claimed innocence while Anthony withered behind closed doors. You'll learn how Los Angeles County missed opportunity after opportunity to intervene. And you'll hear the impact statements, the heartbreak, the fury, the disbelief from those who knew Anthony best. But this isn't just his story. It's a mirror held up to every system designed to protect children and how time after time it chooses to look away. If we don't talk about Anthony, if we don't fight for change now, another child just like him will suffer in silence, and next time it could be too late. Lancaster, California is located in the Antelope Valley area of Southern California. It's a high desert town stretched thin between opportunity and desperation. 70 miles from downtown Los Angeles, it's quiet enough to feel forgotten. But behind the strip malls and the stucco walls, the numbers paint a different picture. High poverty rates, strained services, and families fighting to survive with what little they have. There was a time when the Antelope Valley felt like a promise. Wide open skies, affordable homes, a place where families came to escape the chaos of the city and build something better. Lancaster and Palmdale were growing. The desert felt like hope. But somewhere along the way, that promise began to unravel. Starting in the 1980s, the Antelope Valley transformed into a bedroom commuter colony, a place where families priced out of Los Angeles moved for cheaper housing. But many who migrated to this area still worked in the LA region, commuting hours daily back and forth in order to afford the dream of owning a home. New housing was built. The houses were nice, the idea was nice, But for some reason, the infrastructure didn't follow. Long drives, isolated neighborhoods, and underfunded schools were the result, and kids were left to raise themselves. Then came the gang migration. As housing costs soared in South LA, Compton and Watts families, some gang-affiliated, relocated to the Antelope Valley. With them came transplanted sets of Bloods, Crips, and even MS-13. Turf wars didn't disappear, they changed zip codes. With the gang migration came narcotics, weapons, poverty, and violence. Many of the families who came to the Antelope Valley and bought those new affordable homes started fleeing the gang migration and violence. Those once beautiful new homes and neighborhoods became empty and rotting in the desert sun. Law enforcement cracked down. Lancaster declared a war on gangs in 2012. But the violence wasn't just external, it was institutional. Allegations of deputy gangs within the sheriff's department, especially at the Palmdale station, revealed gang infiltration even in law enforcement. One of the most devastating truths about the Antelope Valley is how isolated it is, not just geographically, but systemically. While families in Lancaster and Palmdale faced crisis after crisis, the very agencies meant to protect them were often located 60 to 70 miles away in the city of LA. CPS, mental health support, and emergency intervention teams were centralized in LA. That meant families in the valley had to drive 60 to 90 minutes, sometimes more, just to access help. And for many, that drive wasn't possible. Maybe they had no car, no gas, they couldn't get the time off work, or didn't have childcare. We've seen the consequences of this. We've buried the children, and let's be honest, many workers didn't want to drive out there either. The Antelope Valley was seen as too far, too rural, too complicated. So cases were delayed, home visits were skipped, follow-ups were forgotten, and children like Anthony Avalos were left behind. And here's the part that hurts the most. It's still happening. Despite the headlines, the trials, the settlements, and the promises, Los Angeles County has failed to deliver real change. Corruption hasn't been rooted out, it's just gotten better at hiding. The Antelope Valley has become the Wild West of unchecked violence, narcotics, and gang activity. In March 2025 alone, authorities seized huge caches of weapons, explosives, and massive quantities of narcotics during raids across Lancaster and Palmdale. And while officials talk reform, whistleblowers are still coming forward with allegations of gangs operating inside the very sheriff stations meant to protect the innocent. Who suffers the most from all of this? The children. The same children who are supposed to be protected by the system. The same children who, like Anthony, fall through the cracks because no one wants to drive 70 miles to check on them, because no one wants to challenge the deep corruption in LA County. It was here in this landscape of dust, poverty, and violence that Anthony was born on May 4th, 2008. His mother, Heather Barone, was just a teenager. His father, Victor Avalos, lived across the border in Mexico, only seeing Anthony a handful of times. Before anyone ever said the name Anthony Avalos with sorrow, before his story became a symbol of systemic failure, he was just a little boy. He liked superheroes, Batman and Spider-Man being his favorites. He was the eldest of 8, a quiet leader among siblings, guiding them through days packed into a crowded apartment and nights dimmed by uncertainty. Although much of Anthony's life was filled with noise and neglect, he found one place where he felt seen, his 4th grade classroom at El Dorado Elementary School. And at the center of that sanctuary was his teacher, Harmony Bell. She wasn't just an educator, she was his safe harbor. She saw him, really saw him, the shy, smart boy who carried a Bible to school and worried when it fell on the floor, not out of fear, but out of reverence. She noticed how he carefully saved snacks to bring home for his siblings, how he asked for space when his emotions swelled, saying softly, "I just need a moment to breathe." Anthony trusted Harmony and would write her letters from his heart. His letters were hopeful and innocent, coming from a child who believed love could outlast pain. But Harmony couldn't protect Anthony when he left the classroom. And when she testified in court years after his tragic death, her voice trembled as she described the boy who brought graham crackers for her and made her smile every time he walked into the classroom. The little boy she couldn't imagine her classroom without. Anthony was a child with big dreams, lots of courage, and an enormous heart. A heart that kept giving even when the world didn't give back. Anthony's so-called mother, Heather Maxine Barone, was born in 1989 and raised in Lancaster. She became a mother young, eventually raising 8 children in a cramped apartment with little income and even less stability. Heather worked part-time at a Subway, earning under $800 a month, but her real job, the one she failed at, was being a mother. Heather had a history with DCFS. Between 2013 and 2018, the department received at least 13 reports of Heather neglecting and mistreating her children. Teachers, family members, even her own children tried to sound the alarm. But as these stories so often reveal, the system didn't listen. Then came Kareem Ernesto Leiva, a real gem of a man. There are no reports he ever held a job. He had a violent past, gang ties, and a criminal record. Heather met Kareem sometime around 2014, and he moved in with her and the children shortly after. She invited in a malignant force. Like a cancer, Kareem fed off the innocence of her children, spreading pain, fear, and ultimately death. The home became a host for cruelty, and Anthony paid the price. They never married, but they lived together for about 4 years off and on. Kareem fathered at least one of Heather's children and quickly became a dominant force in the household. He was controlling, aggressive, and constantly tormenting the children. He would force the children to fight each other for his own amusement and punish them in ways I can't even describe on this platform. And Heather, she didn't stop him. In fact, according to trial testimony, many of the punishments were her idea. Together they created a house of horror, a place where children were locked in rooms, denied food and water, and punished for crying. A place where Anthony, the eldest, bore the brunt of their rage. Heather claimed she was a victim too, that she feared Kareem, that she couldn't stop him, but her children told a different story. They said she was just as cruel, just as calculated, just as responsible. For the first 7 years of his life, Anthony had a connection with his extended family. His aunts, uncles, cousins, they were present, involved, and emotionally invested in his well-being. But according to Heather's sister Maria, that connection was abruptly severed when Heather began her relationship with Kareem. Maria claims that Kareem exerted controlling influence over Heather, and that he actively discouraged or outright prevented contact between them and Anthony. Heather allegedly stopped responding to calls and messages, and family members were no longer allowed to visit. This isolation wasn't just emotional, it was strategic. It removed the safety net that might have intervened. Heather became increasingly withdrawn and fearful, suggesting Kareem's presence created a climate of intimidation. Whether she was coerced or complicit, the result was the same. Anthony was cut off from the people who loved him most. While Kareem's entry into the home marked an escalation into unthinkable violence, it's crucial to recognize that Heather's horrific treatment of her children was not born out of this influence. She was already being reported years before Kareem became part of the household. CPS received multiple complaints, all linked to Heather herself. Heather's pattern of neglecting and harming her children was consistent and deeply entrenched. She didn't protect them from Kareem. She enabled him. She didn't shield them. She participated. That history strips away any illusion that Heather was manipulated or coerced into cruelty. She wasn't a victim. She was the architect of a home that normalized pain. Although all of the children living under Heather's roof were victims, Anthony became the primary target of Heather and Kareem's rage. But why? Anthony was different. He was kind, gentle, protective of his siblings. Teachers described him as thoughtful and brave, the kind of child who stood up for others even when he couldn't stand up for himself. And then there was the moment that may have sealed his fate. Anthony told someone he liked boys. That simple statement, spoken by a child still learning who he was, ignited something cruel in Heather and Kareem. Anthony was also the eldest of the children, the one who remembered more, who could speak up, who could tell the truth. And he did, to teachers, counselors, even therapists. He was the whistleblower, the threat. So they tried to silence him slowly, and his siblings were not only forced to watch, but at times participate in the violence that would ultimately take Anthony's life. Anthony tried to tell someone what was happening to him. He was so brave, but no one with any power to save him seemed to listen, going all the way back to when he was just 4 years old. In February of 2013, Anthony disclosed to a clinic worker that his grandfather, who babysat from time to time, had a quote-unquote inappropriate relationship with him. The clinic immediately reported it to DCFS. Investigators substantiated the claim. They believed him. They confirmed Anthony's story. But instead of removing Anthony or launching a deeper investigation, DCFS accepted Heather's promise to handle it herself. Anthony's grandfather faced no criminal charges. Anthony received no long-term counseling, no protective custody. Instead, he was left in the same orbit of danger with a so-called mother who continued to use this monster for childcare. DCFS was displaying a terrifying pattern in Anthony's case. A child cries out for help, and the system shrugs its shoulders and just walks away. This wasn't just a missed opportunity. It was a warning shot, and it was ignored. When Anthony was about 6 years old, his Aunt Crystal told her therapist that Heather was physically harming Anthony and withholding food and water. The therapist reported Crystal's claims, and a caseworker subsequently interviewed Anthony at school, where he confirmed the allegations. Anthony's own siblings told investigators that Heather was violent towards him regularly, but instead of removing him, DCFS placed the family in a voluntary family maintenance program, a low-risk track with no judicial oversight. Not one child was removed or protected from these monsters. Over the next 4 years, at least 13 calls were made to DCFS. The assistant principal at Anthony's school reported that he was digging through trash for food and that he said his mom was physically harming him. A daycare worker, a counselor, and Anthony's uncle David Barone all made numerous calls to DCFS with serious concerns, all to no avail.
You guys, how long has Kareem been being mean to you guys?
How long?
1,000 weeks.
It seemed no one could save Anthony. He tried so hard to survive. He wanted to live. He wanted to love, but his little body was giving out, and his beautiful spirit was breaking. The last days of Anthony's life were not quiet. They were not peaceful. They were a crescendo of evil. In the days leading up to June 20th, 2018, Anthony was subjected to a relentless barrage of cruelty. He had just finished 4th grade at El Dorado Elementary and was out for summer break. 2 weeks before his death, he wrote a heartfelt letter to his 4th grade teacher, Harmony. "I just want to stay with you forever, but I can't. I just hope you have a good rest of your life, because you already know that I'm going to have a good life." Tragically, Anthony didn't survive that summer, and he never made it to 5th grade. Witnesses and prosecutors say the diabolical and twisted punishments doled out by Heather and Kareem intensified. And as if that wasn't bad enough, Anthony was thirsty and starving. He became so desperate that he'd quickly tuck away small scraps of food, not just for himself, but for his siblings. But that act of kindness came at a severe cost. An alarm was installed on the bedroom door to prevent escape. Anthony was prevented from using the restroom, and when accidents happened, instead of compassion, Anthony faced horrific humiliation. He was no longer allowed to play with toys. He wore sweaters in the summer heat. His body and soul were withering away. And when his body finally gave out, leaving him unconscious on the bedroom floor, no one called for help. Not until it was too late. Anthony's little body gave out on June 21st, 2018, at just 10 years old. The call came in the late afternoon. A 10-year-old boy was unresponsive in his Lancaster apartment.
Okay, and who needs our help today? What happened? My son. Okay. What the fuck? And he woke up and he felt like he was responsive. Okay, listen, does he have a fever? No, he doesn't have a fever. Is he breathing? Okay, listen to me. Listen.
First responders rushed to the scene, and what they found would haunt them forever. The apartment was quiet when first responders arrived, but the silence wasn't peace, it was horror. Anthony lay on the floor, battered and lifeless. He was in full cardiac arrest. First responders tried everything to save him. Heather and Kareem stood by, emotionless. No panic, no remorse, no humanity. To them, Anthony's broken body was no big deal. But to the firefighters, paramedics, and detectives, it was a sight that would never leave them. An EMT stated that Heather never cried. She didn't scream. She didn't ask if Anthony would be okay. She was calm, too calm. She just didn't seem very upset that her child was dying. A firefighter stated that it still troubles them today. Another stayed at the hospital for hours, not wanting to leave Anthony alone. This was horrific, she said. I've never seen a child in that condition. Anthony was rushed from his Lancaster apartment to Antelope Valley Hospital and then later airlifted to UCLA Children's Hospital, where specialists continued efforts to save his life. But tragically, he was pronounced dead soon after arriving. The news broke slowly. That same day, whispers spread through Lancaster. By the next morning, the community knew. Teachers, neighbors, classmates, everyone who had ever seen Anthony smile felt the loss like a punch to the gut. The investigation into Anthony's death began the moment paramedics saw his body. They knew Anthony had endured unimaginable pain, and what happened to him was no accident. Los Angeles County Sheriff's detectives launched a full-scale probe. They interviewed Heather and Kareem separately. Heather claimed Anthony had thrown himself around. Kareem admitted to quote-unquote disciplining Anthony, but denied causing his death. Then came the medical reports. Anthony had suffered severe trauma to his entire body. He was emaciated and severely dehydrated. Anthony's siblings, Destiny and Raphael, described punishments that sounded more like war crimes. Deputy DA Jonathan Hatami stated that the investigation uncovered that Anthony was left lying on the floor for 2 days unconscious before Heather called 911. The silence of those 2 days is louder than any scream. It echoes with cruelty and the unimaginable betrayal of a mother's duty to love and protect her child. The evidence against Kareem and Heather was overwhelming, and on June 27, 2018, just 6 days after Anthony's tragic death, Kareem Lieva was arrested. Kareem was a reported MS-13 gang member in the U.S. illegally, who had prior DV charges from 2010 and 2013. His brother Mauricio Leiva is another alleged MS-13 gang member who was indicted in a federal racketeering case against a deadly illegal substance ring in 2016. Kareem fathered 5 children with 3 other women. According to authorities, he was especially cruel to his non-biological children. Heather was also arrested the next day. Her bail was set at $2 million. The arrest sent shockwaves through Lancaster. Teachers wept. Neighbors gathered for vigils. The community demanded answers, not just from Heather and Kareem, but from the system that had failed Anthony. He didn't just fall through the cracks. He was shoved through them by a system that was supposed to protect him. The Antelope Valley, home to Lancaster and Palmdale, has become a graveyard of failed interventions. Between 2015 and 2023, this region had the highest rate of child deaths among LA County's 8 service areas. Anthony wasn't the first. He followed Gabriel Fernandez, who met the same fate in 2013. And then came Noah Quattro, who died in 2019 after DCFS ignored a judge's removal order. 3 boys, same region, same agency, same outcome. Anthony's case involved 12 different social workers, home visits, interviews, counseling, and still no one protected him. DCFS wasn't monitoring the family at the time of his death, but they had been. They had seen the physical evidence. They had heard the stories, and then they walked away. The community was furious. The family was shattered. They had called DCFS. They had begged for help, but they were ignored. And what did DCFS have to say? That they couldn't point to any one thing they could have done differently. That the question of whether Anthony could have been saved, quote, cannot be answered. That's not accountability. That's cowardice. Between 2000 and 2025, LA County tracked hundreds of child fatalities reported to its child protection hotline. Among them were children who had active DCFS cases. They were being monitored or had prior referrals, meaning the system knew their names, knew their families, and still failed them. The county's own data reveals that dozens of children died while under DCFS supervision, including those with open cases, recent investigations, or prior reports. These weren't unknown children. They were in the system. They were seen, but now they're gone. The Antelope Valley again stands out. In this desert region, the death rate of children with DCFS history was among the highest in the country. Child Protective Services, a name that should evoke hope, safety, rescue. Instead, for too many children, it's a revolving door of oversight, apathy, and failure. Let's talk about the glaring cracks, no chasms, in a system designed to protect our most vulnerable. Social workers received dozens of reports about kids like Anthony Avalos, Gabriel Fernandez, and countless others. Report after report of a child in danger, and still no one removes the child. Why? Because policy says you need concrete evidence, because workers are overwhelmed, because judges will push back, while innocent children live with broken bones and shattered spirits. And then they act surprised when one of them dies. This isn't just one case, it's endemic. Children who cry for help through behavior, injury, withdrawal, but CPS closes their file with a shrug and a timestamp. Meanwhile, loving parents who raise their voices too loud at a school meeting get investigated. Grandparents get denied custody because they're too old. Children are ripped away from safety and handed back to monsters because the monster has visitation rights. Judges, elected officials allow reunification orders even when the parents pose clear and repeated danger. Police treat allegations like domestic disputes. Hospitals discharge children with suspicious injuries because it's not definitive. The systems fail. Then they lie about failing. So let me be clear. CPS isn't just underfunded, it's misguided, politicized, and deeply broken. And unless there's radical overhaul, accountability, transparency, and informed leadership, more babies will fall victim to monsters. These monsters will continue to be coddled, and more mothers, fathers, siblings, and communities will be left screaming into the void. How many more funerals do we need? How many more children have to be buried before child protection actually means something? Let's not become desensitized to these vile, depraved crimes. If this were happening in a foreign prison to an adult, tied up, starved, sleep-deprived, humiliated with horrific injuries all over their body, we'd call it a war crime. We'd call it a human rights violation. We'd haul leaders in front of tribunals, demand sanctions, scream from the rooftops. But when it happens in a kitchen, in a bathroom, in a locked bedroom to a 10-year-old boy named Anthony Avalos, we call it discipline. We call it a tragedy. We call it regretful. No, it's actually the epitome of human suffering and cruelty, and it's happening in neighborhoods everywhere. Our systems are so incredibly broken. DCFS takes babies from loving homes, while monsters like Heather and Kareem keep custody for years. Judges hand out slaps on the wrist. Cops shake their heads and move on. Our leaders are more concerned with funding overseas wars than rescuing our babies that are under siege in their own homes. Why are people more outraged over politics and celebrity gossip than the fact that depraved and inhumane monsters are harming our babies? If we don't fight for our children like their lives depend on it, then what does that say about us? Since Anthony's death in 2018, LA County's DCFS has promised change. They've hired thousands of new social workers, aiming to reduce caseloads that once stretched workers beyond their limits. They've launched electronic systems to give emergency responders instant access to criminal background data. They've cross-trained staff with law enforcement, improved forensic exam access in the Antelope Valley, and retrained social workers on interviewing techniques and handling recanted allegations. There's a new continuous quality improvement team, simulation labs for training, and a countrywide prevention plan focused on keeping families out of the system altogether. These are steps, necessary ones, but are they enough? Deputy DA John Hatami, who prosecuted Anthony's case, says bluntly, "I just do not see the changes DCF is referring to, and the numbers still haunt us." In 2019, the year after Anthony died, child fatalities with prior DCFS history nearly doubled compared to the year before. The Antelope Valley remains underserved. Social workers still struggle with retention. Incentives like bonus pay and transportation help, but they don't erase the trauma or the systemic inertia. The truth? Reform is not a press release. It's not a training module. It's whether or not the next Anthony Avalos gets saved. The trial of Heather Barone and Kareem Leiva began 4 years after Anthony's death in early 2023. They waived the right to a jury, placing their fate in the hands of the LA County Superior Court Judge, Sam Otta. What followed was a non-jury trial that laid bare the legal weight of their crimes. The judge found both guilty of first-degree murder. He ruled that they had worked together to deprive Anthony of access to liquids for a substantial length of time, causing severe dehydration, and that the condition of Anthony's body showed extreme cruelty and intent to kill.
Division A. The court finds defendant Kareem Ernesto Leyva guilty of first-degree murder. There will be no noises expressed while I'm reading this decision. The next person who makes a noise of that nature, an outburst, will be excluded.
Very packed courtroom. They were Judge Samota warning the packed courtroom, reacting to the guilty verdict on all counts, murder and of Kareem Ernesto Leyva and Heather Maxine Barron, and the death of her son, Anthony Avalos.
Okay, Judge. Stephanie's going to speak now.
All right.
Thanks.
It has been 5 long years without my brother, my best friend, and my whole world, Anthony Avalos. Anthony was everything to me and my family. Anthony was a bowl of sunshine to everyone, and sadly, because of these two monsters, he is not here anymore. Anthony did not deserve any of the things that happened to him, nor me and Rafael. I am a 13-year-old girl. I should not have to be here doing all this. I should be able to live a normal life. They both took away my ability to live a normal life as a normal girl. Sometimes I wish I could turn back time and speak up to anyone, but I can't.
Where's she at? Sometimes I wish that I could turn back time and speak up to a teacher. Or anyone at least. But I can't. I wish that Maria never introduced Kareem to you or us. Heather, you and Kareem ruined not only Anthony's life, but mine, Raphael's, Bella's, Noah's, David's, Priscilla's, Evelyn's, and even your own lives. You decided to choose and live, decided to choose and live a man over us, your own children. You decided to let that horrible man into our lives, and that ruined everything. You stopped loving and protecting us, and that hurts a lot. Kareem, you came into our life and ruined everything. I don't know why you did it, but you did. You tortured us and hurt us very badly. If it wasn't for you, Anthony would still be here, and none of us would have to be here doing this. It is also because of Heather that Anthony is not here anymore. She did not do her job as a mother. She did not protect us and took part in the. I would have never thought in a million years that I would have wanted to call my own mother Mom. To me, you are both monsters, and Heather, you are not my mother nor family. If I knew that the abuse would have ended with me losing my brother, I would have said something. But I didn't because I was not scared, but because I was scared and terrified. But I am not anymore, because this is all finally coming to an end, and you both will get what has been waiting for you. I have learned to accept that you guys can't hurt me anymore. I'm finally free from all abuse. But if I were to have known that this would end with me losing a brother, I would do it all over again with just one difference. That it would be me, not Anthony. Thank you, Your Honor.
Thank you, Destiny.
Anthony was a true hero, and thanks to his sacrifice, his siblings were saved and they can have a better life now. Life will truly never be the same. A part of us will always be missing Anthony, and no amount of time will ever take that away. Yes, today we will get some kind of justice for Anthony, but he will never come back. We will never get to see our baby boy again. I will never get to hear him say, Auntie Maria, I love you. I will never get to watch him become a young, amazing man. He wanted to join the military. He wanted to join the army just like his Uncle David. He wanted to become a police officer or a firefighter. Heather, you took his dreams and hopes away. You were supposed to be his protector. You once told me that you would never be like Pearl Fernandez. I remember that day we sat there talking about Gabriel Fernandez and how those horrible monsters took that young child's life. And I remember you telling me you would never be like Pearl Fernandez. Guess what? You're just like her, even worse. You tortured your kids. You failed your kids. And because of you, our family is broken. Slowly but surely the puzzle pieces will come together again. But it will never be the same. Heather, I loved you so much. I loved you so much and always saw the best in you. But today, I have nothing but hate for you. I will never hate someone as much as I do you. Because you failed Anthony, you failed Destiny, you failed Junior, you failed Angel. And you can never be forgiven. Kareem, you'll get what's coming to you. Nobody likes a child abuser. How can a big, strong guy beat up a 10-year-old child? It doesn't make any sense. It will never make sense. Anthony could have never done anything to receive that kind of punishment or treatment. I hope you both rot in hell. I hope that every day you regret what you did, and every time you take a bite of food, you think of how you starved your children, how you starved Anthony.
Thank you. David Barrett.
Hello, Your Honor. I want you to, when you're making your decision, I'm pretty sure you already made your decision, but I want you to know that what these people did to these children is unspeakable. But not only what they did to them physically, they will live with for the rest of their life mentally. They have to live knowing that their brother's gone. They have to live knowing that guilt that they feel because they didn't say something. Those kids are strong, and they need to know that they are loved, and they are not to be blamed. The ones that are at blame are sitting over there in orange suits right now. They need to be in those suits for the rest of their lives, Your Honor.
In my 9 years as a first responder, of all of the hundreds of calls that I've ran, all of the trauma, tragedy, and death that I and other colleagues have seen and heard of, this still surpasses them all. Never have I been a part of such a sad and disgusting situation. And as time passes and new details constantly emerge, it's only gotten worse. I can never or will ever understand the reasoning to all of this. How can someone be that evil to another person, especially to a child, and even worse, your own? The fact that you monsters get to keep your life after brutally taking one and negatively affecting so many others, that you get to breathe, eat, laugh, and live somewhat of a life remains the most unfair. It may seem counterintuitive as someone that rushes to save lives to publicly wish death upon another human. So as a person that lives and preaches in love, I actually wish the opposite for you both. I would hope that you both are made to feel alone, tormented, neglected, scared, confused, unwanted, unsafe, disgusting, useless, hated, lost, unloved, and every other horrible emotion you inflicted on little Anthony and even more. Death would only end those feelings for you, so I pray to God and all the higher powers that you both forever feel the misery you have caused, both in this life and eternally afterwards. I debated on sharing what I thought and felt, thinking that it wasn't my place, like it wouldn't matter or compared to what the family would say. But in the way that it was important to accurately share my experience and knowledge, and to stand up for Anthony in reports and in testimony, I find it important to stand up for myself and his family that are left here behind with this pain to carry. To stand up here and show the impact that he has had on more than just those that knew him, and to speak up and show him that I care more, going way beyond my job as an EMT paramedic. I've always hated hearing, well, now he doesn't have to suffer anymore. No, he should have never suffered in the first place. He should have never experienced that pain, and death should not have been what finally ended it. And murder should have never been part of the narrative. I'm sorry to the family members, teachers, guardians, friends, and all the other first responders and medical personnel, Anthony's legal team, and anyone also affected by losing him. I'm also sorry to the other children that were treated wrongfully and experienced this atrocity. But I'm mostly sorry to you, Anthony, that this ever happened to you. I can only hope now that you know that you never deserved the evil that was imposed upon you, that it was them that was the problem, and you were better than anything you ever received. In a way, I am thankful that it was me who showed up on the worst day. I am forever grateful to have gotten to know you, even if it had to be in only the most unfortunate of circumstances. I am honored with the responsibility bestowed upon me for standing up for you in your corner. And as I am glad this is all finally coming to a close, even though I wish the outcome was nearly as equal as the one that was given to you, I will forever carry a special place for you in my heart. Thank you.
Victor Avalos.
Your Honor, I would like for this courtroom to know just a couple things. It's short. Just because I moved out to Mexico doesn't mean I didn't want to be around Anthony. I loved Anthony very much. I still do, and I miss him. I never knew that this is how it was going to end for him. I wish it never happen, but it did. I wish Heather would have just handed him over to me, like I had told her before. Even though I was far away, I was still willing to take over. My oldest now, his birthday is on May 3rd, while Anthony's on May 4th. It's hard to not think about the next day. My kids tell me if I'm okay. Of course I tell them yes, but it's not like that. So, whatever it is that you make your decision, I know that Anthony would have just be okay for whatever it is that you make your decision. I feel some type of guilt by not being able to help him when he most needed me. I think about that every day. I miss him. But now, I just don't get to hear him, see him how I used to see him through FaceTime or any other application. Instead, I have to go see him at the cemetery. I wish this never happened. I wish Heather would have made the right decision. Sorry. I just want to say thank you for your time, patience. I know this is not an easy case. And we'll be good for whatever is your decision. Thank you.
The sentencing was clear: life in prison without the possibility of parole. But for many, including Anthony's family and DA John Hatami, it wasn't enough. Originally, the case qualified for the death penalty. Under former DA Jackie Lacey, the Special Circumstance Committee had approved it. But after George Gascon took office in 2020, he issued a blanket directive. A sentence of death is never an appropriate resolution in any case. And just like that, the death penalty was dropped. No new evidence, no new mitigation, just policy. Anthony's family was devastated. Even Hatami, the prosecutor who fought for Anthony, said he will never get the justice he actually deserved because of Gascon. The death penalty would have been the closest thing. The trial ended with 2 life sentences, but the pain didn't. Because for those who loved Anthony, justice without accountability feels hollow. And for a boy who suffered so much, the system once again chose restraint over reckoning. 3 years after Anthony Avalos' death, LA County approved a $32 million settlement with his family. The lawsuit accused the county and multiple social workers of failing to respond to repeated reports of serious neglect and physical harm, all ignored.
Hi, the boys' father, aunts, and uncles, along with their attorney, wrapped up a news conference a short while ago. They announced that conditional settlement of $32 million to be paid by LA County. Now, 10-year-old Anthony Avalos was killed back in 2018, allegedly by his mother and her boyfriend. Heather Barron and Kareem Leyva are awaiting a criminal trial. Now, Anthony's father, Victor Avalos, sued LA County about 3 years ago. His attorney announced today that the county has tentatively agreed to settle and pay $32 million to Anthony's father and 3 of Anthony's half-siblings who were also allegedly tortured. Attorney Brian Claypool said DCFS was notified 13 times of within that home, but they dropped the ball. They didn't give Anthony the lifeline he needed. Anthony's aunt said family members had contact with him for the first 7 years of his life, but after that, his mother had custody of him and they were not allowed to see him.
DCFS took that away from me. If we would have done things differently, maybe he would still be here with us. You know, I put all my trust and faith into a system that at the time I didn't know was broken. If I would have known then what I know now, trust and belief, I would have never called. We would have tried to figure things out, just like we always did.
Nothing is gonna bring him back. And I don't think that's fair, you know?
A responsible Department of Child and Family Services would have removed this little boy in 2015. And guess what? He'd be alive today and he'd be smiling today, but for DCFS miserably failing this little boy. So how many complaints do you need? 15, 20, 25, 88 allegations? It should only take one.
Me and my wife physically kept the kids in our house and would not allow the mother to take them, and we called the sheriffs and they were removed. And after 2 weeks of them staying with us at our house, Heather was deemed fit to have them back and they were returned to the household.
They said, okay, she's a good mom.
Anthony reportedly told social workers in private interviews that he had been starved and locked up at home.
We made the reports, we physically kept them out, we called the sheriff, we called Children's Services. What else could we have done? It was their turn to do their job.
Today, Anthony's father, along with his attorney, are demanding a criminal investigation of the social workers involved.
There were 88 specific investigations into specific child physical allegations.
According to the Department of Children and Family Services, only a judge can remove a child from home. However, social workers do have the power to temporarily remove a child prior to a detention hearing if the caseworker feels there's an immediate threat to the minor.
We finally need to take a close look at the systemic failure within this LA County DCFS.
And here it is. The Department of Children and Family Services Director Bobby Cagle released a statement. Here's part of it, which reads, "As our department grieves the senseless death of Anthony Avalos, my primary focus must be on the in-depth, top-to-bottom review now underway to determine exactly what happened." He also says that they are cooperating with the Sheriff's Department.
The settlement was historic, but it wasn't justice. Not a single DCFS employee, no caseworker, no supervisor, no administrator has faced criminal charges or lost their job over Anthony's death. The DCFS issued a statement. "We continue to apply lessons learned." They cited reforms, hiring more social workers, retraining staff, launching new tech systems. But what they didn't do was hold anyone accountable. Heather and Kareem now reside in California State Prison, stripped of freedom, but not of the breath that Anthony was denied. Their appeals are pending, but their fate is sealed. They will never walk free. And yet the system that let Anthony down walks on. No indictments, no firings, no apologies, just a payout and a press release. If you've made it this far in Anthony's story, your heart might be shattered. You might feel sick with rage, powerless, hollowed out by the cruelty he faced and by the indifferent system that let it happen. But let me be clear, feeling isn't enough. Empathy without action is how this system survives. It counts on your heartbreak fading into the background. It wants your outrage to dissolve quietly. It thrives when people tune out. Anthony Avalos did not die so we can scroll past. He died screaming into a silence built by bureaucracy, fear, and failure. We've seen the horrifying failures, the unheeded warnings, the untouched bureaucrats, and we've grieved. But grief without action is silence, and we refuse to be silent. That's why we created Inspector Genxr and our podcast, Little Voices. It's not just a true crime channel, it's a movement. Through raw storytelling, advocacy, and the relentless pursuit of truth, we hold the system to account. We speak for those who were never heard. We challenge policies. We amplify the voices of survivors, reformers, and everyday people demanding change. I didn't start Inspector Genxr because I wanted a platform. I started it because I couldn't take it anymore. I couldn't sit in silence and watch headline after headline about another child murdered, another system failure, another story brushed aside by bureaucrats and buried by the news cycle. Every time I would see an Anthony Avalos, Gabriel Fernandez, or Noah Quattro, I felt the ache of powerlessness. I cried, I screamed at the screen. I asked, how many more? So I did something. I launched Inspector Genxr to give voice to child victims who were never given a chance, to tell their stories after they leave the headlines, to honor their memory and demand that they aren't forgotten. I realized maybe I couldn't fix the whole system, but I could speak. It started with one video, then one podcast, and now it's growing because people like you are listening, sharing, feeling what I feel, the burning need to do something. But we're not done, not even close. We need a chorus of voices, survivors, advocates, reformers, and everyday people joining this fight. I want this platform to grow powerful enough that the system can't ignore us anymore. That someone, anyone in power, finally listens. Because this isn't just content, it's protest, it's love, it's justice. We've already started laying the groundwork at inspectorgenxr.com. You'll find direct links to petitions, updates on our mission, and ways you can support our movement. You can request cases we should cover and sign up for monthly updates to stay connected with what we're doing and where we're going. We're building the path step by step, brick by brick. All you have to do is walk with us. I couldn't sit by any longer, and I know you can't either. If you want to watch the uncensored version of this video, you can join our YouTube Gold membership level or become a supporter on Patreon. That's where the full truth lives. We wish we didn't have to split content this way, but we do, because YouTube censors true crime creators, especially those who speak out about crimes against children. If we violate those guidelines, we risk losing the very platform that helps us reach you, and we cannot afford to let our voices be shut down. By joining our Patreon or YouTube memberships, you're not just unlocking exclusive content, you're actively helping support this movement. You're helping us continue full-time content creation that includes early release videos, behind-the-scenes storytelling, court documents and case breakdowns, uncensored versions of the videos they don't want you to see. We've worked hard to make it easy. Just head over to inspectorgenxr.com. We've provided direct links to join, plus petitions, monthly updates, and a way for you to request cases we should cover. To everyone who has joined, shared, and supported, thank you. You're not just funding content, you're fueling justice. Anthony Avalos was an innocent boy with dimples like raindrops and a smile that lit up rooms he wasn't safe in. He loved math. He wanted to be a cop. He told his teacher, "I want to stay with you forever." He was kind. He was brave. He was only 10. Anthony, we carry you. We speak for you. We fight because of you. You deserved safety. You deserved joy. You deserved life. And though they took that from you, we promise you this: you will never be silenced again. We remember you, Anthony.